Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Steven here, Northwest Small Batch Brewing. So this is a spur of the moment video. I don't expect this to be very long, but I just thought I would, I just had some things going on in my head here. So I recently got a cannular, one of those can seamers, canning machine. Anyway, there's also the October that's out there that I think is more of a professional version, I guess. Also, I think my understanding is the October can do a different style of can, where like the kind that they use in actual breweries. The cans that you can get for the cannular, you kind of have to buy from Kegland because they're a certain type. It's very confusing. There's a lot of little adjustments sometimes you have to make. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the canning because that's not really, I don't want to really talk about that. You don't need canner. The only reason I got it is because I send off enough beers that it's just going to be significantly easier for me if I can just send cans, right? They're not going to break. You don't have to wrap them quite as heavily. You can fit more in a box that way. Wow. Blah, 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 right? All right. So the thing is, I can condition this. That's really what this video is about. I had asked people who can about that. I'm like, can you can condition? Meaning, can you prime it with sugar or whatever and let it naturally carbonate? And nobody I knew who cans has done it. Everybody I know who cans, like, just pours the beer off of, you know, their keg or whatever with a beer gun, and that's that. I don't want to do that. I don't have a beer gun anyway. And also, I've noticed that if you do that, the can is kind of squishy because it doesn't actually get any pressure built in it. So in reality, you don't really know if the can's sealed properly. I had one or two cans where just the tiniest little seal didn't seal quite right. And like I say, you don't really know unless you're conditioning it. Because, I mean, you can tell this is solid, right? I have a towel here. I'm nervous. I filled this pretty much up to the top. Here, let me open it and let's get that over with. Then I won't be so nervous. By the way, here we go. Woo, that scared me, but so far so good. Okay. Yeah, this seems all right. I will say, though, now that I'm pouring this and thinking about it. By the way, this is my Mirror Pond. Oh, how perfect is this? Look at the glass. This is my Mirror Pond clone beer that I just made. And I'll put a link to it. But how perfect is that? I did not know I had a Mirror Pond glass. It's very old glass. Anyway, so I just thought about this. You kind of have to get these 16-ounce cans. You don't have to. I have what's called a spacer. It's basically a part you have to switch out if you want to do smaller cans. But from what I hear, if you do that, then you have to check the gap size and everything and do all these micro adjustments. And people have said it just took forever to get it sealed properly. So I don't want to mess with it. I'm just using the cans that it's already pre-set to. Anyway, but thinking about that, I can't pour the whole can into here. So there's some left. And this is can conditioned, which means there's yeast in the bottom. So that last bit that's still in there is going to be a bit yeasty. Hadn't thought about that. Anyway, either I need a bigger glass. Actually, I do have a bigger glass. I should have thought about that. Anyway, so good news is it didn't explode. I want to say I went with 2.5 pounds of pressure, whatever you call it, for CO2 when I was planning this one. Cheers, by the way. Tastes like beer. Tastes good. Yeah, that worked. So the can conditioning. So I wasn't sure if I needed to leave a little bit of headspace. In fact, I think I did a little research on this. I told you this is off the cusp, right? Ah, yes, this is good. Okay, good. I have some actual substance I can talk to you about for this video. So I wasn't sure, do I need to leave a little bit of headspace like you do in bottles? Or do I fill it right up to the top? And I get various answers on this. So here's the deal. Because I started asking, why is there a gap? Why do we leave a small gap of basically oxygen, unless you're purging it, at the top of the bottle? All right. First of all, they gave 3 reasons that I could find. The first being is to prevent explosions, which I guess is good, although I don't think you're going to have that issue with the cans. But it says during the bottling process, right, yeast continues to ferment the beer. because you're adding sugar, right? That's what's creating the carbonation. So it produces carbon dioxide. The head space at the top allows the gas to expand without causing the bottle to explode. So maybe there should be a small amount of head space at the top. It hadn't occurred to me, but maybe. It says it also reduces oxidation. It says the head space that you have acts as a barrier to minimize the amount of oxygen that comes into contact with the beer. Too much oxygen can lead to oxidation, which can spoil the beer and give it off flavors. I don't think I agree with that. I think maybe they're referring to when you purge it. If you have a beer gun, you can shoot a purge of CO2 real quickly and then put the top on. That would make more sense to me. You're creating a small CO2 barrier there to kind of... But on its own, if you just can conditioning, I don't think that's the case. And finally, the third reason is it ensures proper carbonation. Remember, I'm not making this up. This is the research I found. Adequate headspace helps maintain the right level of carbonation. If there's too little headspace, the pressure can build up too much, which goes to that first problem where you're going to make an explosion. If there's too much headspace, the beer might not carbonate properly. But it doesn't really go into details to why the headspace, creates the right level of carbonation. So I guess the bottom line is, this one was filled pretty much right up to the top, and it seems fine. But I guess maybe leaving just a small amount of headspace, not much, just a little. Maybe that's the way to go. Anyway, that's the research I did on why is there headspace. Honestly, I'm still a little foggy on that. I'd love to get a real scientific reason, like not something you just find on the internet, but a real reason if people know why there is that little bit of headspace in bottles and whatnot. Because when you open a can of beer like this one, generally speaking, I don't ever recall seeing any headspace in it. So it is curious why they do that in glass, but they don't seem to do it in cans. So yeah, I somewhere in my collection, I did some that had a little less, beer in it, and some that were filled to the top. But it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? So anyway, you don't need to can your beer. Bottling is fine. In fact, you can reuse your bottles. The only problem I have, here's how I looked at it. I send a lot of beer out, right? And so cans will make that significantly easier for me. Fine. Bottles, yeah, you can reuse the bottles, and I do, of course. But usually, I would say 95% of the time when I'm giving out beer, I don't get the bottles back. I don't ask for them back because it's too much trouble to ask somebody. You're giving them a gift, basically. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I need that bottle back when you're done drinking it. If they give it back to me, that's great. I'll take it, clean it, sanitize it, reuse it. But otherwise, I don't really push for that. And so the cans will work just as well because I'm not expecting to get the bottle back. And so I'm almost out of time here, but cans don't really take up less space, by the way. You can't see it, but off camera here, I have an enormous box of about 200 cans. I will say the cost is about the same. Like if you buy a case or 2 cases of bottles versus cans, it's about the same. So it's not any cheaper, not more expensive. However, the can seamer is expensive, right? The machine that does the canning. And it seems like, from what I hear, it can have a lot of problems. So anyway, I don't know if that was interesting to anybody, but if you're curious about the whole canning thing, that's my first initial take on it. I'll be back in another week with another video. And until then, thanks for stopping by and listening to me ramble a bit. And see you soon. Cheers.